"Grandma, you didn't look under the table, did you?" 7-year-old Luna's whispered words sent ice through my veins. Her tiny fingers trembled as they gripped mine, her eyes wide with terror that no child should ever know. The wedding reception continued around us in all its glittering splendor, but something in my granddaughter's voice made the world narrow to just the two of us at table 8. If you're watching this video, please like and subscribe to the channel and tell me in the comments where you're listening to my story of revenge from. I was Cordelia Williams, and I had survived 73 years on this earth. I'd buried my husband when he was just 52, raised 2 children through rebellious teenage years and career struggles, weathered the economic downturn that nearly cost us our family home, and endured the devastating loss of my daughter-in-law in a car accident that shattered our family. I'd survived cancer twice, the death of my own parents, and the challenge of adopting Hazel when she was just 16 and aging out of the foster system. But nothing, absolutely nothing, had prepared me for what my granddaughter was about to show me. The Ocean View Grand Ballroom stretched before us like something from a fairy tale. Crystal chandeliers cast dancing shadows across pristine white tablecloths adorned with towering arrangements of white roses, baby's breath, and eucalyptus. The soft jazz music floated through air thick with a mingled sense of gardenias, expensive perfume, and the salt breeze drifting in from the Pacific Ocean through tall windows draped in ivory silk. My son Harrison looked radiant in his midnight blue suit, custom-tailored to perfection. At 35, he was finally smiling again, really smiling, for the first time since Stella's accident 3 years ago. His dark hair was perfectly styled, his blue eyes bright with happiness as he moved from table to table, thanking guests with the enthusiasm of a man who'd found love again after believing it was lost forever. His new bride, Delilah Montgomery Wells, posed for photographs near the dessert table in her beaded Vera Wang gown, every inch the picture-perfect stepmother. At 28, she was stunning, tall and willowy with platinum blonde hair swept into an elegant chignon, sapphire blue eyes that seemed to sparkle in the candlelight, and skin so flawless it looked porcelain. Her smile was radiant as she laughed with her bridesmaids, a sound like wind chimes that carried across the ballroom. Everything about this evening had been orchestrated to perfection. The flowers alone had cost more than most people's cars. I knew because I'd seen the invoice when Harrison asked me to help coordinate with the vendors. The 4-tier cake was a work of art, decorated with sugar flowers so realistic they looked fresh-picked. The band, a renowned jazz ensemble from San Francisco, filled the air with melodies that made even the most reluctant dancers tap their feet under the tables. But Luna sat rigid beside me, barely touching the elaborate feast spread before us. Her small hands clutched a worn toy horse, a palomino with a flowing mane that had seen better days. It was the same one her mother Stella had bought her during their last shopping trip together, just days before the accident that changed everything. The contrast between the celebration around us and Luna's obvious distress was jarring. Children should be enchanted by such grandeur, delighted by the fancy foods and the magical atmosphere. Instead, my granddaughter looked like she wanted to disappear into her chair. Luna had always been a sensitive child, even before the trauma. She noticed things others missed, the way someone's smile didn't reach their eyes, when adults were pretending to be happy, the subtle tensions that most people overlooked. Stella used to joke that Luna had been born with an extra sense for reading people, a gift that both protected and burdened her in equal measure. Since her mother's death, that sensitivity had intensified into something that sometimes worried me. She'd wake up from nightmares she couldn't explain, refuse to go certain places without being able to articulate why, and cling to me or Hazel when her instincts told her something was wrong. The child psychologist we'd consulted said it was a normal response to trauma, that children who'd lost a parent often developed hypervigilance as a survival mechanism. But the look in Luna's eyes wasn't the hypervigilance of a traumatized child. This was something else entirely. This was pure, instinctive terror. "What's wrong, sweetheart?" I whispered, leaning closer so the other guests at our table couldn't hear. "Tell Grandma what's bothering you." Luna's eyes darted around the ballroom, taking in the laughing guests, the dancing couples, the waiters moving gracefully between tables with silver trays. Everything looked normal, festive, joyful. But Luna saw something I didn't, something that made her small frame shake with fear. "Something's not right, Grandma," she whispered, her voice so soft I had to strain to hear her over the music. "I found something and it's scary." My heart began its familiar ache, the same one I'd carried since Stella's death, since watching Luna transform from a carefree 4-year-old into a child who knew too much about loss and fear. But this was different. This wasn't grief or anxiety. This was immediate, present danger. "Show me," I said, though every maternal instinct I possessed screamed that I didn't want to know what had frightened her so badly. Luna glanced around once more, then slowly reached beneath our table. The white tablecloth brushed against her small arm as she felt around in the darkness underneath. When her hand emerged, she held a crumpled piece of paper, folded so small it could have been mistaken for a mint wrapper or a piece of lint. Her fingers shook as she pressed it into my palm, and I could feel the dampness of nervous sweat on the paper. Luna had been holding on to this for who knows how long, carrying this burden alone while trying to appear normal at her father's wedding. The ballroom continued its celebration around us, guests toasting with crystal champagne flutes, the band transitioning into a romantic ballad, Harrison kissing his new wife as cameras flashed, but my world narrowed to that tiny square of paper. My arthritic fingers, usually so steady despite my age, trembled as I began to unfold it. The first crease revealed nothing but blank white space. The second showed the edge of handwritten text, feminine script in blue ink. With the third fold, words became visible, and with the fourth, *table 8. Add shellfish to the child's plate. Make sure she gets extra. The more the better. *. The words blurred as my vision tunneled. The sounds of the reception, laughter, music, clinking glasses, faded to a dull roar in my ears. My hands went numb, and for a moment I thought I might faint right there at the table. Luna was severely allergic to shellfish, a fact our entire family knew by heart because we'd lived through the terror of her first reaction when she was just 3 years old. Stella had given her a tiny bite of shrimp at a restaurant, not knowing about the allergy, and within minutes Luna had been struggling to breathe, her face swollen beyond recognition, her tiny body convulsing as we rushed her to the emergency room. The doctors said if we'd arrived even 5 minutes later, we would have lost her. Since then, every family gathering, every restaurant visit, every meal had been carefully planned around Luna's allergy. We carried EpiPens everywhere, read ingredient labels religiously, and made sure everyone who cared for Luna knew the seriousness of her condition. One bite of shellfish could send her into anaphylactic shock. One bite could kill her. And someone at this wedding, someone who knew about her allergy, had just instructed the catering staff to make sure she got extra. "Where did you find this?" My voice came out as a hoarse whisper, though I'd intended to sound calm and reassuring. Luna's response made my blood turn to ice. It fell from the waiter's tray when he bumped into our table earlier. I picked it up because I thought it might be important. She looked up at me with those wise old eyes that had seen too much for her 7 years. "Grandma, someone wants to hurt me, don't they?" The innocent question, asked with such heartbreaking directness, nearly broke my composure entirely. How do you explain to a child that someone, likely someone at this very celebration, wants her dead? How do you process that level of evil while maintaining the facade of normalcy required at a wedding? I looked up, scanning the reception with new eyes. The waiters moved like ghosts between tables, carrying silver trays laden with appetizers. I could see shrimp cocktail, crab cakes, lobster bisque shots, all the elegant shellfish preparations that marked this as a high-end affair. The main course hadn't been served yet, but I could see the kitchen staff in the distance, preparing individual plates with military precision. My gaze found Delilah at the head table, and what I saw made my skin crawl. She wasn't posing for photos anymore. Instead, she was watching our table with an intensity that seemed completely at odds with the joyful occasion. Her sapphire eyes were fixed on Luna and me with a focus that felt predatory. When our eyes met across the crowded ballroom, something passed between us, a moment of recognition, of understanding. Delilah knew that I'd found the note, and I knew that she was responsible for it. She raised her champagne flute in what looked like a toast, but her smile was sharp as broken glass. It was a challenge, a mockery, a silent declaration of war. The beautiful bride was celebrating not her marriage, but what she believed would soon be the death of my granddaughter. The realization hit me like a physical blow. This woman, this person my son loved, whom he'd just promised to cherish and protect, had planned to murder Luna at their own wedding. The evil of it, the calculated coldness required to orchestrate a child's death during what should have been the happiest day of her life, left me reeling. But even as shock and horror threatened to overwhelm me, another emotion rose to the surface. Rage. Pure, clean, protective rage that burned away fear and hesitation and left only crystal-clear purpose. No one threatened my granddaughter and lived to celebrate it. "Luna, listen to me very carefully," I said, forcing my voice to remain steady despite the panic clawing at my chest. "We're going to walk to the ladies' room together. Slowly, calmly. Don't run, don't look scared. Just hold my hand and trust Grandma, okay?" Luna nodded, her small face grave with understanding beyond her years. She tucked her toy horse into her small purse, a miniature version of an adult evening bag that Hazel had bought her specially for the wedding, and stood with the poise of a child who'd learned early that sometimes survival depended on appearing normal when everything was falling apart. But as we prepared to leave our table, a figure intercepted us. Tessa Montgomery, Delilah's younger sister, appeared at my elbow with the nervous energy of someone carrying a guilty secret. At 19, she was still young enough to have that fresh-faced innocence that made her beauty seem almost ethereal, but old enough to understand the weight of the choices she was making. Tessa had always seemed like the family misfit. Where Delilah was polished and perfect, Tessa was bohemian and slightly scattered. She wore flowing skirts and layered jewelry, studied art history at UC Berkeley, and spoke passionately about social justice causes. During the wedding planning, she'd been the only one to show genuine interest in Luna, asking about her hobbies and school friends with what seemed like authentic curiosity. Now, looking at her anxious face and trembling hands, I realized that interest might have had a darker purpose. "Mrs. Williams," Tessa said, her voice barely audible over the music. She glanced around nervously, as if checking to make sure no one could overhear us. "Delilah wanted me to make sure Luna tries the special children's plate they prepared just for her. She said it has all of Luna's favorite foods." The girl's hands shook as she spoke, and there was something in her eyes. Guilt, fear, confusion, that told me she wasn't fully aware of what she was being asked to do. But she was aware enough. Somewhere in her young heart, she knew this request wasn't innocent. "Tessa," I said quietly, stepping closer so our conversation wouldn't carry to other tables. "Look at me." The girl's eyes finally met mine, and I saw the truth there. She wasn't a willing accomplice, but she wasn't entirely innocent either. She was caught in the web of family loyalty and manipulation that Delilah had spun around her, young enough to be controlled but old enough to sense something was wrong. "Did your sister tell you exactly what was in that special plate?" Tessa's face crumpled slightly, and I could see her fighting back tears. "She said it was a surprise," she whispered. "Something special to help Luna feel more included in the family." Her voice broke on the last words, and I knew she'd begun to suspect what kind of inclusion her sister had in mind. The word included made my blood boil. My granddaughter was about to be murdered, and they called it inclusion. The twisted logic of it, the way they'd convinced themselves, or at least convinced Tessa, that this was somehow for Luna's benefit, revealed a level of psychological manipulation that chilled me to the bone. "Tessa, honey," I said, keeping my voice gentle despite the rage burning inside me, "Luna is severely allergic to shellfish. Even a tiny amount could kill her. Did you know that?" The color drained from Tessa's face so quickly I thought she might faint. Her hand flew to her mouth, and her eyes went wide with horror as the full implications of what I was saying sank in. "Oh my God," she breathed. "Oh my God, no. She wouldn't. She couldn't." But even as she said it, I could see her mind working, connecting dots, remembering conversations and moments that suddenly took on sinister new meaning. "She would," I said grimly. And she did. The question now is whether you're going to help me stop her, or whether you're going to let your sister murder a child." Tessa began crying in earnest then, quiet sobs that shook her thin shoulders. "I didn't know," she kept repeating. "I swear I didn't know. She just said it would help them bond, help Luna accept her as a stepmother. She made it sound like it was for Luna's own good. I believed her." Tessa was young, impressionable, and had been raised to trust and obey her older sister. Delilah had probably spent months or even years conditioning her to follow instructions without question, grooming her to be the perfect unwitting accomplice. But belief didn't equal forgiveness. Luna's life hung in the balance, and Tessa's ignorance, willful or otherwise, had nearly cost my granddaughter everything. "Where is Hazel?" I asked, scanning the ballroom for my adopted daughter. "Over by the gift table, I think," Tessa managed through her tears. I spotted Hazel across the room, elegant in her sage green bridesmaid dress, gracefully accepting congratulations from distant relatives and family friends. At 31, she'd grown into a stunning woman with warm brown eyes, honey-colored hair that caught the light, and the kind of natural grace that made everyone feel comfortable in her presence. Hazel had come to us as a broken 16-year-old, aging out of foster care with nowhere to go and no one to trust. She'd been placed with 12 different families over her childhood, experiencing neglect, abuse, and abandonment that should have destroyed her capacity for love. Instead, she'd channeled her pain into fierce protectiveness for those she considered family. When Stella died and Harrison retreated into his grief, Hazel had stepped forward without hesitation. She'd been Luna's sanctuary, the steady presence who read bedtime stories, helped with homework, and held my granddaughter during the nightmares that still came too often. If anyone would know how to handle this situation, it was Hazel. "Hazel," I called, my voice carrying across the ballroom with more authority than I'd intended. She looked up from her conversation, saw my expression, and immediately started toward us. Hazel had always been able to read my moods with uncanny accuracy, a skill honed during her turbulent childhood when survival often depended on anticipating adult emotions. As she approached, weaving gracefully between dancing couples and chattering groups, I could see her taking inventory of the situation. Luna pressed close to my side, Tessa crying into her hands, my own face probably white with shock and rage. By the time she reached us, she was already in protective mode. "What's wrong?" she asked, her voice low and urgent. Without a word, I pressed the note into her hand and watched her face go white as she read it. I saw the exact moment understanding hit her. Her eyes widened, her jaw clenched, and her hands began to shake with a fury that matched my own. "Where did you find this?" she asked, her voice deadly quiet. "Luna found it. It fell from a waiter's tray." Hazel's gaze shifted to Tessa, who was still sobbing quietly. "And what's her involvement?" "She was supposed to make sure Luna ate the special plate," I said, watching as understanding and disgust crossed Hazel's features. For a moment, I thought Hazel might strike Tessa right there in the middle of the ballroom. Instead, she took a deep breath and focused on what mattered most. "Take Luna outside," she said. "Right now. I'll find Harrison and—" "No." The word came out sharper than I'd intended, but I couldn't let Harrison be pulled into this chaos. Not yet. "Look at him, Hazel." We all turned toward the head table where Harrison stood with his arm around his new bride, completely oblivious to the trap that had been set for his daughter. He looked happier than he had since Stella's funeral, genuinely, radiantly happy in a way that had seemed impossible just hours ago. He was laughing at something Delilah had whispered in his ear. His whole face lit up with joy and love and hope for the future. He'd been through so much pain, so much loss. Stella's death had nearly destroyed him, and watching him slowly rebuild his life had been both heartbreaking and inspiring. Now, just as he'd found happiness again, I was going to have to shatter that happiness forever. Because there was no coming back from this. Once Harrison learned what Delilah had tried to do, once he understood the depth of her deception and malice, his marriage would be over. The love he thought he'd found would be revealed as manipulation. His trust as naivety. His hope as delusion. But Luna's life was worth more than Harrison's momentary happiness. My granddaughter's safety mattered more than my son's feelings, more than family harmony, more than keeping peace at this elegant wedding. "He needs to know," Hazel said quietly, reading my thoughts. "Harrison has a right to know what kind of person he just married." "He does," I agreed. "But not yet. Not until Luna is safe and we have this situation under control." Hazel nodded, understanding my reasoning. Harrison's first instinct would be to confront Delilah directly, and that confrontation needed to happen on our terms, with witnesses and evidence and Luna safely out of harm's way. "What do you need me to do?" she asked. "Take Luna to your car and lock the doors. Don't let anyone near her until I come out. If I'm not out in 15 minutes, drive straight to the police station." "Grandma, what about Daddy?" Luna asked, looking toward Harrison with worried eyes that held too much understanding. My son stood at the head table, arm around his new bride, completely oblivious to the fact that his daughter's life was in danger and his marriage was built on lies. He looked so happy, so hopeful, so completely trusting in the woman who just tried to orchestrate his child's murder. "Your daddy will understand," I told her, though I prayed it was true. "He loves you more than anything in the world, and once he knows what's been happening, he'll want you safe above all else." Luna nodded solemnly, then surprised me by turning to Tessa. "Are you going to help us stop her?" she asked with the directness that only children possess. Tessa looked down at Luna, this small, brave girl whose life her sister had tried to end, and something shifted in her expression. The tears stopped, replaced by a resolve I hadn't expected from someone so young. "Yes," she said firmly. "I'm going to help you. What my sister did. What she tried to make me part of. It's unforgivable." As Hazel hurried Luna toward the exit, I turned my attention to finding the waiter who'd been carrying the note. My eyes swept the ballroom, taking in the elegant chaos of the reception. Servers moved like synchronized dancers between tables, carrying trays of champagne and elegant hors d'oeuvres. The band had transitioned to a livelier number, and more couples were joining the dance floor. Everything looked normal, festive, joyful, but I now saw it all through the lens of potential threat. How many of these people knew about Delilah's plan? How many were complicit? And how many were simply innocent guests enjoying a celebration? I spotted him near the service station, a young man with kind eyes and nervous hands, currently arranging champagne flutes on a silver tray. His name tag read Atlas, and he looked to be in his early 20s, probably working his way through college like so many young people in the service industry. I approached him with the measured pace of a predator stalking prey, my years of experience dealing with difficult people serving me well. Atlas looked up as I neared, and I saw recognition flash in his eyes. He remembered me as the older woman from table 8, the one with the serious little granddaughter who'd barely touched her food. "Excuse me, Atlas," I said, my voice carrying the authority of 7 decades. "I believe you dropped this earlier." I held up the note, watching as his face went pale. The champagne flute in his hand trembled slightly, and I could see him struggling to remember the exact circumstances of how he'd lost it. "Ma'am, he began, but I cut him off. "Who gave this to you?" Atlas glanced around frantically, clearly wanting to be anywhere but under my intense scrutiny. The other servers were busy with their tasks, but I could see a few of them starting to notice our conversation. "A woman from the wedding party," he said finally. "Blonde, blue dress. She said it was special dietary instructions for the little girl at table 8. He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing nervously. She seemed really concerned about making sure the child got exactly what she needed. Special dietary instructions. The euphemism made my stomach turn. Delilah had presented Luna's potential murder as careful attention to her dietary needs, probably earning Atlas's admiration for being such a thoughtful stepmother. "What exactly did she tell you?" "Press. She said the little girl had specific preferences, and that the kitchen staff should follow the instructions exactly. She seemed really sweet about it, talking about how much she wanted her new stepdaughter to feel included in the celebration." Atlas's voice grew quieter as he spoke, and I could see dawning awareness in his expression. Is something wrong? The little girl is severely allergic to shellfish, I said quietly, watching his face transform as the implications hit him. This note was asking you to poison her. Atlas stumbled backward as if I'd physically struck him. The color drained from his face completely, and for a moment I thought he might collapse right there among the champagne flutes. Oh my God, he whispered. Oh my God, I would never. I didn't know. She seemed so caring, so concerned about the child's happiness. His voice broke as the full horror of what he'd almost participated in sank in. Ma'am, I swear to you I had no idea. If I'd known, I never would have taken that note to the kitchen. I believed him completely. Atlas was clearly a decent young man who'd been manipulated just like Tessa, used as an unwitting tool in Delilah's plan. His horror was genuine, his distress real. He'd thought he was helping a caring stepmother create a special moment for her new daughter, not participating in an attempted murder. Where is the plate now? Asked my voice urgent. Still in the kitchen, I think. They were preparing to serve the children's meals first, but I can. He stopped, his face going even whiter if that was possible. The other servers. They're starting to plate the kids' dinners now. If someone doesn't stop them. The urgency of the situation hit me like a sledgehammer. While I'd been gathering information and ensuring Luna's safety, the kitchen staff had been following Delilah's instructions, carefully adding shellfish to my granddaughter's meal. If Luna had still been at the table, if she'd taken even a single bite. Go, I said sharply. Stop them. Tell them there's been a mistake with Table 8's order. The child has a severe allergy and can't have any shellfish. Make sure they prepare a completely new plate. Atlas nodded and hurried toward the kitchen, nearly stumbling in his haste to prevent the disaster he'd unknowingly helped create. I watched him go, then turned back toward the reception with my heart pounding and my mind racing. The immediate danger was being handled, but the larger threat remained. Delilah was still here, still playing the perfect bride, still posing for photos and accepting congratulations while knowing full well that she'd just attempted murder. The audacity of it, the complete lack of remorse or fear, suggested a level of sociopathy that chilled me to the bone. I walked back into the reception hall with my head high and my heart full of righteous fury. The time for subtlety was over. The time for keeping family peace was over. The time for giving Delilah the benefit of the doubt was long past. Delilah had declared war on my granddaughter. Now she was going to learn what happened when you threatened a Williams child. I made my way through the elegant crowd, past dancing couples and chattering groups, toward the head table where the wedding party sat in their finery. The ballroom seemed to sparkle around me. Crystal chandeliers casting rainbow prisms across the dance floor, flower arrangements that must have cost thousands filling the air with their perfume, the gentle murmur of expensive celebration that spoke of careful planning and unlimited budgets. But all I could see was the woman in white who sat at the center of it all, radiating innocence and joy while hiding the heart of a killer. Delilah looked every inch the perfect bride. Her Vera Wang gown caught the light with each subtle movement, the intricate beadwork creating patterns that seemed to shift and flow like water. Her makeup was flawless despite hours of celebration. Her smile never faltering as she posed for yet another photograph with Harrison's college friends. She was playing her role to perfection, the devoted new wife, the caring stepmother, the woman who'd brought joy back into a grieving widower's life. Everyone here saw exactly what she wanted them to see: beauty, grace, and loving devotion. But I saw the truth now. I saw the calculated coldness behind her sapphire eyes, the predatory intelligence that had orchestrated this entire elaborate charade. This wasn't a woman who'd made an impulsive, terrible decision. This was someone who'd planned a child's murder with the same attention to detail she'd put into choosing her flowers and wedding menu. As I approached the head table, Delilah's gaze found mine across the crowded dance floor. For just a moment, her perfect mask slipped. I saw triumph in her eyes, satisfaction, the smug confidence of someone who believed she'd successfully eliminated a threat to her happiness. She thought Luna was still at table 8. She thought her plan was proceeding exactly as she designed it. In her mind, my granddaughter was about to take the first bite of food that would send her into anaphylactic shock, creating a tragic accident that would remove the biggest obstacle to Delilah's perfect new life. The realization that she was actively anticipating Luna's death, that she was sitting here in her wedding dress, savoring the moments before a child's murder, filled me with a rage so pure and cold it felt like righteousness itself. But I forced myself to remain calm, to think strategically. Delilah had shown me her true nature, but she'd done it believing she was untouchable, protected by the chaos and celebration of her wedding day. She'd made her move in the most public possible setting, surrounded by witnesses and family, confident that no one would suspect the radiant bride of attempted murder. That confidence was about to become her downfall. I changed course, heading not for the head table but for the small staging area where the band had set up their equipment. The jazz ensemble was just finishing a romantic ballad that had drawn more couples onto the dance floor, including Harrison and Delilah, who swayed together as if they were the only two people in the world. Watching my son hold the woman who'd tried to kill his daughter, seeing the love and trust in his eyes as he gazed down at her, nearly broke my composure. But it also strengthened my resolve. Harrison deserved to know the truth, no matter how much it would hurt him. I approached the band leader, a distinguished gentleman in his 50s who'd been performing at high-end events for decades. He recognized me immediately. I'd been the one coordinating with the venue staff all evening, making sure everything ran smoothly. "Mrs. Williams," he said with a warm smile. "Beautiful celebration. The happy couple looks absolutely radiant." "They do indeed," I said, my voice steady despite the storm raging inside me. "I wonder if I might borrow your microphone for just a moment. There's something I need to share with our guests." The band leader looked puzzled but handed over the wireless microphone without question. After all, it wasn't unusual for family members to make toasts or announcements at wedding receptions. I walked to the center of the dance floor, feeling the weight of the microphone in my hand and the eyes of 200 wedding guests beginning to focus on me. The music faded as the band realized something was happening, and gradually the conversations died down as people turned to see what the grandmother of the bride was about to say. Harrison and Delilah had stopped dancing, standing frozen in the middle of the dance floor just a few feet away from me. I could see confusion in Harrison's eyes, but something else in Delilah's, a flicker of alarm as she began to realize that her perfect plan might not be unfolding as expected. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, my voice carrying clearly through the ballroom's excellent sound system. "Thank you all for being here to celebrate this joyous occasion with our family." A murmur of polite applause rippled through the crowd. Some guests raised their champagne glasses, expecting a traditional grandmother's toast. "Before we continue with the evening's festivities," I continued, "I have something important that I need to share with all of you. Something that affects not just our family, but the safety of everyone here." The murmur died completely now, replaced by an expectant silence. I could feel the tension ratcheting up as people sensed this wasn't going to be a typical wedding speech. I reached into my purse and pulled out the note Luna had found, holding it up so everyone could see it. "A few minutes ago, my 7-year-old granddaughter found this note under our table," I said, my voice never wavering despite the magnitude of what I was about to reveal. "It contains instructions for the catering staff, instructions that would have killed her." The silence that followed was deafening. Then the whispers started, rippling through the crowd like wildfire as people began to process what I'd just said. "The note specifically requests that shellfish be added to the child's plate at table 8, I continued. "My granddaughter is severely allergic to shellfish. Even a small amount could send her into anaphylactic shock and kill her within minutes." The whispers grew louder, more urgent. I could see shock and confusion on faces throughout the ballroom as guests struggled to understand what they were hearing. Harrison was staring at me in horror, his face pale. "Mom, what are you saying? There must be some mistake." "There's no mistake, Harrison," I said, my heart breaking for him even as I pressed forward with the terrible truth. "Someone at this wedding deliberately tried to murder your daughter." The reaction was immediate and overwhelming. Gasps of shock, cries of disbelief, the sound of champagne glasses hitting the floor as people's hands went limp with horror. The elegant celebration dissolved into chaos as guests turned to each other with wide eyes and frantic whispers. But I kept my eyes fixed on Delilah, watching as her perfect composure began to crack. The radiant smile was gone, replaced by something cold and calculating. She was no longer the blushing bride but a cornered predator, dangerous and desperate. "That's impossible," she said, her voice carrying clearly in the acoustics of the ballroom. "Who would do such a terrible thing? And why would you make such a horrible accusation on our wedding day?" The innocent confusion in her voice was masterful. She sounded like a shocked and wounded bride, devastated that someone would bring such darkness to her special day. If I hadn't known the truth, if I hadn't seen the triumph in her eyes just moments before, I might have believed her myself. But I had seen, and I had proof. "The person who would do such a thing," I said, my voice cutting through her performance like a blade, "is the person who wrote this note." I unfolded the paper and read aloud. "Table 8, add shellfish to the child's plate. Make sure she gets extra. The more the better." The words hung in the air like a death sentence. The ballroom was completely silent now, except for someone's quiet sobbing somewhere in the back. "This note was given to a waiter by a blonde woman in a blue dress," I continued, looking directly at Delilah. "A woman who claimed to be concerned about making sure the child felt included in the celebration." Delilah's face went white, but she rallied quickly. "You're suggesting that I would try to hurt Luna? That's insane. I love that little girl. I want to be her mother." The lie was so brazen, so audacious that it took my breath away. She was standing there in her wedding dress, surrounded by family and friends, boldly denying an attempt to murder a child while the evidence literally stood in my hand. "Love," I repeated, my voice dripping with disgust. "You call attempted murder love?" Harrison stepped between us, his face a mask of confusion and growing horror. "Mom, please. There has to be an explanation. Delilah would never." "Ask Tessa," I said quietly, nodding toward where Delilah's sister stood near the gift table, tears streaming down her face. All eyes turned to the young woman, who looked like she wanted to disappear into the floor. The weight of 200 stares seemed to crush her, but she found her voice. Tessa's voice cracked. "Delilah asked me to make sure the waiter got special instructions for Luna's plate. She said it was a surprise, something to help them bond." She looked at her sister with betrayal and horror. "I didn't know about the allergy. I swear I didn't know." The admission hit the ballroom like a physical blow. Gasps and cries of shock rippled through the crowd as the truth sank in. But Delilah wasn't finished fighting. "She's lying," Delilah shrieked, her perfect composure finally cracking. "They're all lying. This is some sick plot to ruin my wedding because they never wanted me in this family." But as she spoke, I saw Atlas pushing through the crowd, still wearing his server's uniform. His young face was pale with shock and determination. "Ma'am," he called out, addressing me directly. I stopped the kitchen staff. They were about to serve the plate, but I made them throw it away and prepare a new one. He turned to face the crowd, his voice growing stronger. "The blonde woman in the blue dress, she's the one who gave me the note. She told me it was special dietary instructions to make the little girl happy." Delilah's face went ashen as Atlas's testimony corroborated everything I'd said. The waiter's honest face and genuine distress were impossible to doubt, and I could see the shift in the crowd as people began to truly understand what had almost happened. Harrison stood frozen, looking between his new wife and the damning evidence mounting against her. "Delilah," he said, his voice barely a whisper. "Tell me this isn't true. Tell me you didn't try to hurt my daughter." For a moment, I thought she might continue denying it, might try to salvage the situation with more lies and manipulation. But something in Harrison's voice, some note of finality, seemed to break her resolve. The mask came off completely then, revealing the cold, calculating woman beneath. "She was never going to accept me," Delilah said, her voice flat and emotionless. "That little brat has hated me from day one. She whispers poison in your ear, turns you against me. I saw how you looked at those pictures of Stella, how you still couldn't bring yourself to put them away even after we got engaged. The room was dead silent now, everyone straining to hear her confession. Harrison's face went through a series of emotions: shock, disbelief, and finally, devastating understanding. You tried to kill my daughter because you were jealous of her dead mother? He asked, his voice breaking. I tried to solve our problem. Delilah snapped, any pretense of sanity abandoned. One little accident, and we could have been truly happy. Really happy, without that constant reminder of your precious Stella hanging over us like a ghost. The words hit the ballroom like a bomb. Someone screamed. Several guests started crying. Others pulled out their phones, some calling the police, others capturing the shocking confession on video. She's 7 years old, Harrison said. His voice filled with horror and rage. She's 7 years old, and you wanted to kill her because she reminds me of her mother? She would have died knowing she was loved, Delilah said with chilling matter-of-factness. It would have looked like a tragic accident. No one would have blamed anyone. And then we could have had our own children, our own perfect family, without her shadow hanging over everything. The casual way she discussed murdering Luna, the complete lack of remorse or recognition of what she was saying, revealed a level of sociopathy that left the entire ballroom speechless. But I wasn't speechless. I was done listening to this monster discuss my granddaughter's death like it was a minor inconvenience. Security, I called, knowing the hotel staff would be monitoring the situation. Call the police. This woman just confessed to attempted murder. You can't prove anything, Delilah said, but her voice lacked conviction now. She was looking around the ballroom desperately, searching for allies who were no longer there. It's just a piece of paper. Anyone could have written it. Actually, came a new voice from the crowd. We can prove quite a lot. Detective Marcus Reed pushed through the crowd, his badge visible on his jacket. He was Harrison's college roommate and longtime friend, invited as a guest but now clearly acting in his professional capacity. Mrs. Montgomery Wells, he said formally. Or should I say Mrs. Harrison Wells now? You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. As Detective Reed continued reading Delilah her rights, the ballroom erupted in chaos. Guests were crying, shouting, pushing toward the exits. The perfect wedding had become a crime scene. The elegant celebration transformed into a nightmare that would haunt everyone present for the rest of their lives. But through it all, I felt only relief. Luna was safe. The monster who'd tried to destroy her had been exposed and would face justice. My granddaughter would never have to sit at another family dinner pretending to like the woman who wanted her dead. Harrison stood in the middle of it all, still in his wedding tuxedo, watching as his bride of less than 4 hours was handcuffed and led away. His face was a mask of devastation and disbelief. How did I not see it? He whispered as I approached him. How was I so blind? Because you wanted to believe in love again, I said gently, taking his hand. Because you wanted Luna to have a mother. There's nothing wrong with hope, Harrison. The evil was all hers. As the police finished processing the scene and the last shocked guests finally departed, our family was left alone in the wreckage of what should have been a joyful celebration. The elegant decorations seemed grotesque now, the flowers and candles mocking the darkness that had been revealed. But we were together. We were alive. And Luna was safe. The media descended on our family like vultures within hours of Delilah's arrest. Bride attempts to murder stepdaughter at wedding, screamed the headlines, accompanied by photos of Delilah being led away in handcuffs, her wedding dress trailing behind her like a broken promise. Our quiet suburban street became a circus of news vans, reporters, and curiosity seekers. They camped outside our house for days, shouting questions whenever any of us stepped outside, treating Luna's near-death experience like entertainment. I drew all the curtains and unplugged the landline, creating a fortress of silence where Luna could begin to process what had happened. But the child who'd always been sensitive to adult emotions was struggling more than I'd anticipated. She barely slept those first few nights, jolting awake from nightmares she couldn't articulate. During the day, she clung to either Hazel or me, refusing to let us out of her sight. The confident little girl who'd bravely found and reported the threatening note had retreated into a shell of fear and confusion. "Grandma," she asked one morning as we sat in the kitchen, "why did Delilah want to hurt me? What did I do wrong?" The question broke my heart. How do you explain pure evil to a 7-year-old? How do you help a child understand that sometimes people hurt others not because of anything they've done, but because of something broken inside themselves? "You didn't do anything wrong, sweetheart," I said, pulling her onto my lap. "Sometimes grown-ups make very bad choices, and those choices aren't about you at all. They're about something sick inside the grown-up." "But she was going to be my new mommy," Luna said, her voice small and confused. "Mommies are supposed to protect children, not hurt them." I held her closer, feeling the weight of her confusion and betrayal. Luna had lost her biological mother to a tragic accident, something random and senseless but not malicious. Now she'd learned that the woman who was supposed to fill that void had actually wanted to destroy her. The psychological damage from that revelation would take years to heal. Harrison was struggling even more. He'd taken indefinite leave from his job, unable to concentrate on anything beyond his guilt and self-recrimination. He wandered the house like a ghost, muttering apologies to Luna that she didn't understand and couldn't accept because she didn't blame him. "I brought a monster into our home," he said to me one evening after Luna had gone to bed. We were sitting in the living room, surrounded by family photos that now seemed tainted by Delilah's presence in our lives. I let her around my daughter. I trusted her with Luna's life. "You fell in love," I said simply. "You're a widower with a young child who wanted to believe in happiness again. That's human, Harrison. That's not something to be ashamed of." "But the signs were there, weren't they?" he pressed. Looking back, I can see moments when Luna was uncomfortable around her, times when Delilah said or did things that should have raised red flags. I ignored all of it because I wanted to believe I'd found love again. He was right, there had been signs. Luna's reluctance to warm up to Delilah, her nightmares increasing during the engagement period, the way she'd started clinging to Hazel even more desperately. But hindsight was cruel, and I couldn't let my son torture himself with what-ifs. "Even if you'd seen the signs," I said, "would you have imagined she was capable of murder? Would anyone?" The truth was that Delilah had been extraordinarily skilled at deception. She'd presented herself as everything Harrison needed: beautiful, successful, loving toward Luna, supportive of his grief over Stella. She'd played the role of perfect stepmother-to-be with Academy Award-worthy performance. The police investigation revealed the depth of her manipulation. They found journals detailing her plans, research into Luna's allergy, and disturbing entries about her resentment toward both Luna and Stella's memory. She'd been planning this for months, possibly since the beginning of their relationship. Detective Reed shared some of the findings with us, though he kept the most disturbing details to himself out of consideration for Luna. "She saw your daughter as an obstacle to be removed," he explained during one of his visits to update us on the case. In her mind, eliminating Luna would solve all her problems. Harrison's attention would be entirely hers, there would be no reminders of his first marriage, and they could start fresh with their own children. The clinical way he described Delilah's mindset was somehow more chilling than her emotional outburst at the wedding. She hadn't killed Luna in a moment of passion or rage. She'd planned it methodically, like solving a business problem. "What I don't understand," Harrison said, "is why at the wedding? Why such a public venue with so many potential witnesses?" "Because it was the perfect cover," Detective Reed explained. "Wedding receptions are chaotic, emotional events where people are drinking and distracted. If Luna had gone into anaphylactic shock during dinner, it would have looked like a tragic accident, a mix-up in the kitchen, maybe, or cross-contamination. Everyone would have been focused on saving her life, not investigating how the allergen got on her plate. And Delilah would have been the grieving stepmother," I added, the implications making me feel sick. The woman who tried so hard to include her new daughter, only to lose her to a terrible accident on their wedding day. The sympathy would have been overwhelming, Detective Reed agreed. She would have been seen as a victim too, losing her stepdaughter before she'd really had a chance to bond with her. It was actually brilliant in its evil. The trial was scheduled for 6 months later, giving us time to heal and prepare for the media circus that would inevitably surround the proceedings. Delilah's defense team tried to paint her as mentally ill, a woman driven to desperation by the challenges of blending families and the pressure of competing with a dead wife's memory. I felt no sympathy for that argument. Mental illness didn't excuse attempted murder, and Delilah's actions were too calculated, too methodical to be the result of temporary insanity. She'd known exactly what she was doing, and she'd done it anyway. The most difficult part was protecting Luna from the worst of it. We couldn't shield her completely. She would have to testify, though the judge allowed for closed proceedings and child advocates to help her through the process. But we could control how much she knew about the investigation and the public fascination with our story. Hazel became our anchor during those dark months. She'd taken family leave from her job as a social worker to stay with us, and her experience with traumatized children proved invaluable. She worked with Luna's therapist to create coping strategies, helped establish new routines that felt safe, and slowly began rebuilding Luna's trust in adults. "She's stronger than she knows," Hazel told me one evening as we watched Luna play in the backyard, finally comfortable enough to be outside without one of us directly beside her. "Children are remarkably resilient when they have people they can trust to protect them." "You've been incredible with her," I said. "I don't know how we would have gotten through this without you." Hazel blushed, but she also looked troubled. "I keep thinking about what might have happened if Luna hadn't found that note, or if she'd been too scared to show it to you. The what-ifs are driving me crazy." "But she did find it," I reminded her. "And she was brave enough to act on her instincts. That little girl saved her own life by being smart and trusting you and me enough to ask for help." As autumn turned to winter, our lives slowly began to find a new normal. Luna returned to school, though we'd switched her to a private academy with better security and smaller class sizes. Harrison started therapy and gradually returned to work part-time. The media attention faded as other stories captured public interest. But the healing was ongoing, and probably would be for years to come. Luna still asked questions about Delilah, trying to understand how someone could smile at her while planning her death. Her therapist said this was normal. Children need to make sense of traumatic experiences, even when those experiences are senseless. "Was she always bad?" Luna asked one day as we baked cookies together, one of our new traditions designed to create positive memories in the kitchen where she'd once been afraid to eat. "I think she was sick in her mind," I said carefully. "Sometimes people have thoughts that tell them to do terrible things, and they don't fight against those thoughts the way they should." "But she seemed nice sometimes," Luna said, confusion evident in her voice. "She bought me that chocolate at dinner once, and she helped you with the dishes." This was the hardest part for Luna to understand, that evil often wears a friendly face, that the people who hurt us aren't always obviously monsters. Delilah had shown kindness when it served her purposes, but underneath it all was cold calculation. "Bad people are often good at pretending to be nice," I explained. "That's what makes them dangerous. If they were mean all the time, everyone would stay away from them." "How do you tell the difference?" she asked. It was such an important question, and one that would serve her well as she grew older. "You trust your feelings," I said. "Remember how you always felt uncomfortable around Delilah, even when she was being nice. Your heart knew something was wrong, even when your mind didn't understand what it was." Luna nodded solemnly. "I should have told you sooner about feeling scared." "You did perfectly," I assured her. "You found the note, you showed it to me right away, and you helped save yourself. You were the hero of your own story, Luna." The idea seemed to comfort her, and I could see her straightening with something like pride. She'd been the victim of a terrible crime, but she'd also been her own rescuer. That was a powerful thing for a child to understand about herself. 6 months after the wedding from hell, I found myself sitting in a courtroom watching my son's ex-wife face charges of attempted murder. The media attention had died down somewhat, but the courtroom was still packed with reporters, legal observers, and curiosity seekers drawn to the sensational nature of the case. Delilah looked different without her wedding finery. The orange jumpsuit and handcuffs were a stark contrast to the elegant bride who'd posed for photos while planning a child's death. Her blonde hair had grown out, showing dark roots, and the perfect makeup was gone, revealing the ordinary woman underneath the carefully constructed facade. But her eyes were the same, cold, calculating, utterly without remorse. Her defense team had crafted a narrative around mental illness and the pressures of blending families, portraying her as a woman driven to desperation by circumstances beyond her control. They brought in expert witnesses to testify about the psychological challenges of becoming a stepmother, the trauma of competing with a deceased spouse's memory, and the stress of trying to bond with a resistant child. I sat through their testimony with growing anger. They were trying to make Delilah the victim of her own crime, suggesting that Luna's attachment to her dead mother and my family's loyalty to Stella's memory had somehow driven a stable woman to attempt murder. The defendant found herself in an impossible situation, her lawyer argued during opening statements. She was expected to fill the role of mother to a child who refused to accept her, while competing with the idealized memory of a woman who could never disappoint or fail because she was no longer alive to be human. It was a sophisticated defense, and I could see some jurors nodding along with the reasoning. The idea that stepmothers faced unique challenges was true enough, and most people could empathize with feeling like they were in competition with an ex-spouse, let alone a deceased one. But it was also complete bullshit. Plenty of stepmothers faced similar challenges without resorting to murder. The vast majority of blended families navigated these difficulties with love, patience, and professional help when needed. The prosecution, led by District Attorney Sarah Chen, painted a very different picture. She presented evidence of Delilah's meticulous planning, her research into Luna's allergy, and the calculated nature of her scheme. This was not a crime of passion, Chen told the jury. This was not a desperate woman making an impulsive decision. This was a cold, calculated attempt to murder a 7-year-old child, planned and executed with the precision of someone who knew exactly what she was doing. The evidence was overwhelming. The note in Delilah's handwriting. Atlas's testimony about receiving instructions from a blonde woman in a blue dress. Tessa's reluctant admission that she'd helped deliver the deadly message to the kitchen staff. Security footage showing Delilah speaking privately with Atlas earlier in the evening. But the most damning evidence came from Delilah's own journals, seized during a search of the apartment she'd shared with Harrison during their engagement. Chen read excerpts aloud, and the coldness in Delilah's own words was more chilling than anything the prosecution could have argued. Asterisk. Luna will never accept me as long as she has that shrine to her dead mother to worship. Harrison says he's moved on, but he still gets that look when she talks about Stella, like she's this perfect angel who could do no wrong. How do you compete with a ghost? Asterisk. Asterisk, the child's allergy could be useful. Everyone knows about it. The whole family is obsessed with making sure she doesn't accidentally ingest shellfish. It would be so easy for there to be a mistake, in a restaurant kitchen or at a large event. No one would question it. Asterisk. Asterisk, the wedding would be perfect timing. All the chaos and emotion, all the potential for things to go wrong in a hotel kitchen serving hundreds of people. If something happened to Luna during our reception, it would be seen as a terrible tragedy, not murder. Harrison would grieve, of course, but then we could move forward with our own children, our own family, without her shadow hanging over everything. Asterisk. The entries went on for pages, detailing Delilah's growing resentment toward Luna and her methodical planning of the child's death. There was no evidence of mental illness, no indication that she didn't understand the difference between right and wrong. Just cold, calculating evil. When it came time for Luna to testify, the judge cleared the courtroom of everyone except essential personnel and allowed her to speak via closed-circuit television from a child-friendly room adjacent to the courtroom. Even so, watching my 7-year-old granddaughter describe finding the note that would have killed her was one of the hardest things I'd ever endured. Luna was brave and clear in her testimony, describing how she'd found the paper under the table and immediately known something was wrong. The prosecutor asked gentle questions about her relationship with Delilah, and Luna's answers painted a picture of a child who'd tried to be polite but had never felt safe around her stepmother. She smiled a lot, Luna said when asked to describe Delilah. But her smiles never felt real. They felt like when actors smile on TV. Out of the mouths of babes. Luna's instinctive understanding of Delilah's false nature was more insightful than anything the expert witnesses had offered. The defense's cross-examination was limited due to Luna's age, but they did try to suggest that she might have misunderstood the note or been coached by adults to interpret it as threatening. Luna's response was devastating in its simplicity. "I know what shellfish is," she said firmly. "I know I'm allergic. I know that eating it could kill me. When I saw the note saying to put it in my food, I knew someone wanted to hurt me." Harrison's testimony was heartbreaking. He spoke about his love for Delilah, his hopes for their marriage, and his complete shock at discovering her true nature. The prosecution walked him through the timeline of their relationship, highlighting moments when he might have seen red flags if he hadn't been so desperate to believe in love again. Did the defendant ever express frustration about Luna's attachment to her deceased mother? Chin asked. "Sometimes," Harrison admitted. She said she felt like she was competing with a ghost, that it was hard to build a relationship with Luna when the child was so focused on her mother's memory. "But I thought that was normal. I assumed any stepmother would feel that way." "Did she ever suggest that your life would be easier without Luna?" Harrison's face crumpled. "Not directly. But she talked about how much simpler things would be when we had our own children, how we could start fresh without the complications of my first marriage." "At the time, how did you interpret those comments?" "I thought she meant when Luna was older and more accepting of her, or when we had siblings for Luna to bond with. I never imagined." He couldn't finish the sentence. Hazel's testimony focused on her observations of Delilah's interactions with Luna. As a trained social worker, she'd noticed subtle signs of the manipulation and emotional abuse that had been building toward the murder attempt. The defendant was skilled at appearing caring in public while being subtly cruel in private, Hazel explained. She would make comments that seemed concerned on the surface but were actually designed to make Luna feel guilty or unwanted. "You must miss your mommy so much," said in front of other adults sounded sympathetic, but the tone and timing made Luna feel like her grief was inconvenient. The defense tried to paint Hazel as biased, suggesting that she'd been romantically interested in Harrison herself and had therefore been looking for reasons to dislike Delilah. It was a fair point. Hazel's feelings for Harrison were obvious to anyone paying attention, but it didn't change the facts of what she'd observed. "My own testimony was the most difficult. I had to walk the jury through that terrible evening at the wedding, from Luna's frightened whisper to the moment I exposed Delilah's crime in front of 200 guests. But I also had to explain why I hadn't acted sooner on my instinctive distrust of Delilah. I wanted to be wrong," I admitted. "I wanted to believe that my concerns were just the overprotectiveness of a grandmother who'd already lost one daughter-in-law." Harrison was happy for the first time since Stella's death, and I didn't want to take that away from him based on nothing more than a feeling that something wasn't right. "Do you regret not speaking up sooner?" the prosecutor asked. "Every day," I said honestly. "But I also know that without concrete evidence, my concerns would have been dismissed as an old woman's paranoia. Delilah was very good at making me look like the problem whenever I questioned her behavior." The defense's case relied heavily on expert testimony about blended family dynamics and the psychological pressures faced by stepmothers. They brought in psychiatrists who testified about adjustment disorders and the potential for otherwise stable people to break under extreme stress. But they couldn't overcome the evidence of premeditation. The journals, the research into Luna's allergy, the careful planning that went into choosing the wedding as the perfect cover for murder. All of it pointed to a woman who knew exactly what she was doing and why. When Delilah finally took the stand in her own defense, I expected her to maintain the facade of mental illness and emotional breakdown that her lawyers had constructed. Instead, she did something that shocked everyone in the courtroom, including her own legal team. She told the truth. "I'm not crazy," she said calmly when asked about her mental state during the time leading up to the wedding. I wasn't having a breakdown or suffering from some kind of adjustment disorder. I made a rational decision based on what I wanted my life to look like. Her lawyer looked stricken, obviously wanting to stop her from continuing, but Delilah was on a roll. Luna was never going to accept me, she continued. No matter what I did, how patient I was, how much effort I put into bonding with her, she was always going to prefer the memory of her dead mother. And Harrison was always going to choose her over me when it came down to it. So you decided to kill her? The prosecutor asked during cross-examination. I decided to solve the problem, Delilah said with chilling matter-of-factness. One way or another, she was going to come between Harrison and me for the rest of our lives. At least this way, it would have been over quickly, and we could have moved on. You're talking about murdering a 7-year-old child. I'm talking about removing an obstacle to my happiness, Delilah replied without a trace of emotion. She would have died knowing she was loved. It would have looked like an accident. No one would have been blamed, and Harrison and I could have had the life we deserved. The courtroom was silent as the full scope of her sociopathy revealed itself. This wasn't a woman driven to desperation by impossible circumstances. This was someone who viewed a child's life as expendable if it interfered with her desires. Do you feel any remorse for what you attempted to do? Chen asked. I feel remorse that I failed, Delilah said coldly. I feel remorse that my life has been destroyed by that little brat's interference. But I don't regret trying to solve the problem. I regret not being more careful about it. Her testimony sealed her fate. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours before returning a guilty verdict on charges of attempted murder in the first degree, conspiracy to commit murder, and child endangerment. During sentencing, the judge spoke directly to Delilah with a disgust that was palpable. In 30 years on this bench, I have rarely encountered such callous disregard for human life, Judge Patricia Hawkins said. You attempted to murder an innocent child not out of passion or mental illness, or any circumstance that might inspire understanding. You did it because she was inconvenient to your desires. She sentenced Delilah to 25 years to life in prison, with a possibility of parole only after serving the full 25 years. As the bailiff led Delilah away in shackles, she turned back one final time to look at our family in the gallery. Her eyes found Harrison first, then Luna, and finally me. This isn't over, she mouthed silently. But it was over. Justice had been served, Luna was safe, and our family could finally begin to heal. The guilty verdict brought relief, but not immediate peace. Luna was 8 now, and while she understood that Delilah couldn't hurt her anymore, the psychological scars ran deep. She still woke up sometimes from nightmares she couldn't fully explain, still checked under tables before sitting down at restaurants, still asked careful questions about who had prepared her food. Her therapist, Dr. Sarah Martinez, said this hypervigilance was normal for trauma survivors, especially children. Luna experienced a profound betrayal of trust, she explained during one of our sessions. Someone who was supposed to protect her tried to harm her. It's natural that she would be cautious about trusting new people or feeling safe in unfamiliar situations. The therapy was helping slowly but surely. Luna was learning coping strategies, ways to manage her anxiety, and most importantly, how to rebuild trust in the adults around her. Dr. Martinez worked with our whole family, helping Harrison deal with his guilt, supporting Hazel as she navigated her complex relationship with our family, and even coaching me on how to help Luna without being overprotective. Children need to feel empowered, Dr. Martinez told me during one session. Luna saved her own life by being brave and speaking up when she sensed danger. That's something to celebrate, not something that should make her feel like she needs constant protection. It was a delicate balance, acknowledging Luna's strength and intelligence while still providing the security she needed to heal. But gradually, she began to regain her confidence. School was a challenge at first. The other children knew about what had happened from news reports their parents had seen, and Luna had to deal with a mixture of sympathy, curiosity, and sometimes cruel fascination with her story. Some kids treated her like a celebrity, others like she was fragile and might break at any moment. But Luna's teacher, Mrs. Rebecca Foster, was wonderful about managing the situation. She worked with a school counselor to educate Luna's classmates about appropriate responses to trauma, and she created classroom activities that allowed Luna to feel normal and integrated without ignoring what she'd been through. Luna is one of the most resilient children I've ever worked with, Mrs. Foster told us during a parent conference. She's intelligent, empathetic, and she has an amazing ability to help other children who are going through difficult situations. I think her experience, as terrible as it was, has given her a wisdom and strength that will serve her well as she grows up. It was true. Luna had developed an almost uncanny ability to sense when other people were in distress and a natural inclination to help them. She befriended the new student who was struggling to fit in, comforted classmates who were dealing with their parents' divorces, and even helped another child who was being bullied find the courage to speak up to adults. I think she sees herself as a protector now, Dr. Martinez observed. She knows what it feels like to be vulnerable and afraid, so she wants to help other people feel safe. At home, our family dynamics were slowly shifting and healing. Harrison had been through extensive therapy of his own, working through his guilt about bringing Delilah into our lives and his terror at how close he'd come to losing Luna. The process was painful but necessary. I keep thinking about all the signs I missed, he told me one evening as we watched Luna play in the backyard with a new friend from school. The way she would go quiet when Delilah was around, how she started having more nightmares during the engagement. Even that night at dinner when Delilah offered her chocolate and Luna refused. I thought she was just being rude, but she was probably sensing something wrong. Children's instincts are often better than ours, I said. They haven't learned to rationalize away their feelings the way adults do. How do I make sure this never happens again? He asked. How do I protect her without becoming so paranoid that I never trust anyone? It was the central question he'd been wrestling with in therapy. How do you maintain faith in human goodness after discovering how thoroughly you can be deceived? How do you open your heart to love again when you've learned that evil can wear such a beautiful mask? You listen to Luna, I said. You pay attention to her comfort level with new people, and you trust her instincts even when you don't understand them. You also recognize that what happened with Delilah was extraordinary. Most people aren't sociopathic murderers, even if they're not perfect partners. Harrison nodded, but I could see the struggle in his eyes. The damage Delilah had done extended far beyond her attempt on Luna's life. She'd poisoned his ability to trust his own judgment, to believe in his capacity to choose good people and protect his daughter. Hazel's role in our family had evolved as well. What had started as temporary support during the crisis had become a permanent arrangement. She'd officially moved in with us, taking over the guest room that had become her de facto bedroom anyway. Her presence had become essential to Luna's sense of security and to Harrison's healing process. The romantic tension between Harrison and Hazel was obvious to everyone, but neither of them seemed ready to address it directly. They moved around each other with careful politeness, co-parenting Luna with seamless coordination but maintaining emotional distance that felt both protective and frustrating. I decided to intervene. "You two are being ridiculous," I announced one evening after Luna had gone to bed, addressing both Harrison and Hazel as they sat at opposite ends of the living room, studiously avoiding eye contact. "Mom," Harrison began, but I cut him off. "Delilah tried to destroy this family, and in some ways she's still succeeding if you two keep dancing around each other instead of acknowledging what everyone can see." Hazel blushed but didn't deny the accusation. "It's complicated," she said quietly. "It's only complicated because you're making it complicated," I said firmly. Luna almost died, Harrison almost lost his daughter, and we all learned that life is too short and too precious to waste time pretending we don't feel things we clearly feel. Harrison looked up at Hazel with an expression of longing mixed with uncertainty. "I don't want to mess this up," he said quietly. "You've been so good to Luna, so good to our family. If I push for something more and it doesn't work out, then you're assuming I don't care about you the same way you care about me," Hazel said, her voice barely above a whisper. The admission hung in the air between them, fragile and precious. I could see them both struggling with fear Fear of losing what they already had, fear of not being enough for each other, fear of disrupting the delicate balance we'd achieved as a family. Luna asked me yesterday when you two were going to get married, I said, deciding to push them past their paralysis. She said she already thinks of Hazel as her mom in her heart, and she doesn't understand why you two keep pretending you're just friends. Both Harrison and Hazel looked startled by this revelation. She said that? Hazel asked, tears beginning to form in her eyes. She said she knows her first mommy loved her very much, but that Hazel loves her too, and there's room in her heart for both. She said she wishes she had a mommy who was alive to hug her and help her with homework and read her stories. The tears were flowing freely down Hazel's cheeks now. I love her so much, she whispered. I've loved her like my own daughter since the day Stella died. But I didn't want to overstep, didn't want to try to replace. You're not replacing anyone, Harrison said, finally moving from his chair to sit beside her on the couch. Stella will always be Luna's first mom, the one who gave her life and loved her for her first 4 years. But Luna needs a mom who's here now, who can be part of her daily life and her future. And I need you, Hazel. I think I've needed you for a long time. They talked through the night, finally voicing feelings they'd been carefully hiding for years. By morning, they decided to stop dancing around each other and see where their relationship could go. The change in our household was immediate and wonderful. Luna bloomed under the security of knowing the adults she loved were committed to each other and to her. The careful politeness between Harrison and Hazel disappeared, replaced by the easy intimacy of people who'd been caring for each other all along but could finally admit it. 2 years after the trial, life had settled into a rhythm that felt both normal and precious. Luna was 10 now, confident and bright, with a kind of inner strength that comes from having survived something terrible and knowing you can handle whatever life throws at you. She'd started taking karate lessons, not because she was afraid but because she wanted to feel physically strong to match the mental strength she'd developed. Her instructor, Master Kim, was a patient woman who understood that Luna's motivation came from a place of empowerment rather than fear. She's a natural leader, Master Kim told us after one of Luna's classes. The other children look up to her, not just because of her skill, but because she has this way of making everyone feel included and capable. It was true. Luna had developed an extraordinary ability to sense when people were struggling and a natural inclination to help them. She befriended new students, helped younger children with their forms, and somehow managed to boost everyone's confidence just by believing in them. School was going well too. Luna was in 5th grade now, consistently on the honor roll, and involved in student government. She'd been elected class representative, running on a platform of kindness and inclusion that had won over teachers and students alike. She has a gift for bringing people together, her teacher, Mr. James Patterson, told us during parent-teacher conferences. Even children who don't usually get along seem to find common ground when Luna's involved. She's going to be an extraordinary leader someday. Harrison had finally proposed to Hazel on Luna's 9th birthday, making it clear that he wanted Luna to be part of the proposal. The 3 of them had gone on a family camping trip, and Harrison had waited until they were sitting around the campfire on their last night to pull out the ring. Hazel, he'd said, getting down on one knee while Luna giggled with excitement beside him. Will you marry us? It was perfect, acknowledging that this wasn't just about Harrison and Hazel, but about the family they'd already become. Hazel had said yes through tears of joy, and Luna had insisted on being the one to put the ring on her finger. The wedding was small and intimate, held in our backyard with just family and close friends. Luna served as maid of honor, walking down the aisle in a dress she'd helped pick out, carrying a bouquet of sunflowers, Stella's favorite flower, incorporated as a way of honoring Luna's first mother while celebrating her new one. Detective Reed officiated the ceremony, having become ordained online specifically for the occasion. It seemed fitting that the man who'd helped bring Delilah to justice should be the one to unite the family she tried to destroy. Harrison, Detective Reed said during the ceremony, do you promise to love and cherish Hazel, and to build with her a home where Luna can grow up feeling safe, loved and valued? I do, Harrison said, his voice thick with emotion. Hazel, do you promise to love and support Harrison, and to be the mother Luna needs? not to replace the one she lost, but to give her the love and guidance she deserves as she grows up? I do, Hazel said, looking down at Luna with eyes full of love. And Luna, Detective Reed said, turning to include her in the vows. Do you accept Hazel as your stepmother, and do you promise to be patient with your dad and Hazel as they figure out how to be married to each other? Luna giggled. I do, she said enthusiastically, making everyone laugh. The reception was exactly what we needed. Joyful, relaxed, focused on family rather than spectacle. No elegant ballroom, no formal dinner service. Just a backyard full of people who loved each other, celebrating a union that felt like it had been years in the making. Harrison and Hazel had gone on a brief honeymoon to Napa Valley, leaving Luna with me for a long weekend. It was the first time she'd been away from Hazel for more than a day since the incident with Delilah, and I'd been slightly worried about how she'd handle it. I needn't have been concerned. Grandma, she said as we made breakfast together on their second morning away, I'm really happy Daddy and Hazel got married. Me too, sweetheart. How are you feeling about everything? Good, she said thoughtfully. I know some kids get upset when their parents remarry, but Hazel isn't trying to make me forget Mommy. She says I can love both of them, and that makes me feel better. You can absolutely love both of them, I assured her. Your heart is big enough for all the people who deserve to be in it. I think Mommy would like Hazel, Luna said with the matter-of-fact wisdom she'd developed. She would want me to have someone to take care of me, and Hazel does that really well. These conversations about Stella had become easier over time. Initially, Luna had seemed afraid to mention her first mother, as if doing so might somehow betray Hazel or make the adults uncomfortable. But therapy and honest family discussions had helped her understand that Stella would always be part of our family, even though she wasn't physically present. We'd created rituals to honor Stella's memory, visiting her grave on her birthday and the anniversary of her death, making her favorite cookies at Christmas, looking through photo albums and sharing stories about her. Hazel had been the one to suggest most of these traditions, understanding that Luna needed to feel connected to her biological mother in order to fully embrace her relationship with her stepmother. Life settled into a comfortable rhythm. Harrison had returned to his job as an engineering consultant, but with better boundaries and a clearer understanding of his priorities. He was home for dinner most nights, present for Luna's school events, and actively involved in the daily routines of family life in a way he hadn't been during his grief-stricken years after Stella's death. Hazel had taken a position as a family therapist specializing in trauma recovery, work that felt deeply meaningful after our own experiences. She was particularly gifted at helping children who'd survived abuse or violence, using her own background and our family's story to give hope to other survivors. I want them to see that terrible things can happen to good people, but that doesn't mean their story is over, she explained to me after a particularly difficult day working with a young client. Luna is proof that children can survive trauma and thrive, that they can learn to trust again and build beautiful lives despite what they've been through. As for me, I'd found new purpose in victim advocacy work. The trial had connected me with other families who'd been affected by violent crime, and I discovered a calling in helping them navigate the legal system and healing process. It was difficult work, often heartbreaking, but it gave meaning to the trauma our family had endured. I also wrote a book about our experience. Not a sensationalized true crime story, but a guide for families dealing with manipulation and abuse. The Warning Signs: How to Protect Your Family from Hidden Danger became a resource for parents, grandparents, and caregivers who wanted to learn how to recognize potentially dangerous people in their lives. The book wasn't about living in fear or becoming paranoid about everyone we meet. Instead, it focused on trusting our instincts, listening to children when they express discomfort, and understanding that evil often wears a beautiful mask. The goal isn't to make people afraid of everyone, I explained during a book signing at the local library. It's to help people understand that it's okay to trust their feelings when something doesn't feel right, even if they can't articulate why. Luna, now 11, sometimes came with me to speaking engagements when they were age-appropriate. She'd grown into a poised, confident young woman who wasn't afraid to share her story when it might help other children. The most important thing I learned, she told an audience of parents and teachers, is that kids usually know when something is wrong, even if adults don't believe them or they don't have the words to explain it. If a child says they don't like someone or feel scared around someone, adults should listen. Her wisdom and maturity never ceased to amaze me. She'd taken the worst experience of her childhood and found ways to use it to help others, transforming trauma into purpose in a way that spoke to incredible resilience and strength. 5 years had passed since Delilah's conviction when we received news that she was eligible for a parole hearing. The notification came in the mail on an ordinary Tuesday morning, and the sight of the official letterhead made my blood run cold. Luna was 13 now, in 8th grade, thriving in every way that mattered. She'd grown tall and graceful, with her mother's warm brown eyes and her father's determined chin. She played violin in the school orchestra, was captain of the junior varsity soccer team, and maintained a 4.0 GPA while somehow still finding time for volunteer work at the local animal shelter. The idea that Delilah might be released, might be free to seek revenge or simply to exist in the same world as my granddaughter, filled me with a rage I thought I'd put behind me. "She's not getting out," Harrison said firmly when I showed him the letter. "She tried to murder a child. There's no way a parole board is going to release her after just 7 years." But I wasn't so sure. Delilah had always been persuasive, skilled at manipulation and presentation. Prison might have given her time to craft a compelling narrative about rehabilitation and remorse. She might have found religion, earned degrees, participated in therapy programs. All the things that looked good on a parole application. "We need to be prepared to fight this," I said. The victim impact statements we'd be allowed to present at the hearing became a family project. Luna, now old enough to understand the full implications of what had happened to her, insisted on writing her own statement. "I want to tell them how her actions affected me," she said with the quiet determination that had become her trademark. "Not just the fear and nightmares, but how it changed the way I see the world, the way I have to be careful about trusting people." Her statement, when she finally finished it, was devastating in its honesty and maturity. My name is Luna Wells, and when I was 7 years old, my stepmother tried to kill me at her own wedding. I know that sounds like something from a movie, but it really happened. Delilah Montgomery planned to poison me with shellfish, knowing I was severely allergic and that even a small amount could kill me. She didn't do this because she was crazy or because she didn't understand what would happen. She did it because she saw me as an obstacle to her happiness. I'm 13 now, and I've had 6 years to think about what happened and how it affected me. I want the parole board to understand that this wasn't just an attempt at murder. It was an attempt to murder a child, someone who had no power to protect herself and who trusted the adults around her to keep her safe. Because of what Delilah did. I had to learn at age 7 that people who smile at you and act nice might actually want you dead. I had to learn that evil doesn't always look like a monster. Sometimes it looks like someone beautiful who brings you chocolate and helps your grandmother with dishes. I still check my food carefully before eating it. I still feel nervous when new people join our family or when I have to trust someone I don't know well. I still have nightmares sometimes, not about dying, but about not being believed when I try to warn people about danger. Delilah took away my childhood innocence and my ability to trust easily. She made me grow up too fast and too scared. She almost stole my entire future for no reason other than jealousy and selfishness. If she gets out of prison, I'll spend the rest of my life looking over my shoulder, wondering if she's going to try to finish what she started. I'll worry about my future children, wondering if she might hurt them to get back at me for surviving. Some crimes are so terrible, so calculated, so evil that they can't be forgiven or forgotten. What Delilah did to me was one of those crimes. She doesn't deserve a second chance to hurt people because she never deserved the first chance she took. Please don't let her out. Please don't make me spend the rest of my life afraid of the woman who tried to kill me when I was 7 years old. Thank you. Luna Wells. Reading Luna's statement aloud during our preparation sessions left all of us in tears. The eloquence with which she described the lasting impact of Delilah's crime, The way she articulated fears and concerns that we hadn't even realized she carried demonstrated just how much damage had been done by that one terrible night. Harrison's statement focused on his own guilt and the way Delilah's deception had affected his ability to trust his judgment as a parent. Delilah Montgomery didn't just try to kill my daughter. She destroyed my faith in my ability to protect her. She manipulated me so completely that I brought a would-be murderer into my home, gave her access to my child, and nearly enabled her to commit the perfect crime. 4 years after her conviction, I second-guessed every decision I made about Luna's safety. I questioned my judgment about teachers, babysitters, family friends, anyone who came into contact with my daughter. Delilah didn't just try to take Luna's life. She tried to take my confidence as a father. The fact that she showed no remorse during the trial, that she actually stated she regretted failing rather than attempting the crime, tells me everything I need to know about her character. She is not someone who can be rehabilitated because she doesn't believe she did anything wrong. If she is released, I'll spend every day of the rest of my life wondering if this is the day she decides to finish what she started. I'll never be able to let Luna walk to school alone, go on dates, or live a normal teenage life because the woman who tried to kill her might be out there waiting for another opportunity. Please don't give her that opportunity. Please keep my daughter safe by keeping Delilah Montgomery in prison where she belongs. Hazel's statement addressed the impact on our family as a whole and her perspective as both a stepmother and a trauma therapist. As Luna's stepmother and as a professional who works with trauma survivors, I've seen firsthand the long-term damage that Delilah Montgomery's crime has caused our family. Children who survive attempted murder don't just get over it with time. They carry the knowledge that someone wanted them dead, that they survived only through luck and the intervention of others. Luna has worked incredibly hard to heal from this trauma, but she'll never be the carefree, trusting child she might have been if Delilah hadn't tried to kill her. More troubling is what this case reveals about Delilah's character. She didn't attempt murder in a moment of passion or mental breakdown. She planned it carefully, manipulated multiple people to help her carry it out, and showed no remorse when caught. These are not the characteristics of someone who can be successfully rehabilitated. As a therapist, I've worked with many individuals who've committed terrible crimes but who genuinely want to change and make amends. Delilah Montgomery is not one of those people. Her complete lack of empathy, her view of a child's life as expendable for her convenience, and her continued belief that she was wronged rather than being the wrongdoer make her a continued threat to society. Please don't release someone who sees murder as an acceptable solution to personal problems. Please don't give her another chance to hurt the child she already tried to kill. My own statement was the longest, drawing on not just our personal experience but my work with other crime victims and my research into criminal psychology. 7 years ago, Delilah Montgomery tried to murder my 7-year-old granddaughter at her own wedding reception. She planned this crime carefully, researched Luna's allergy, manipulated multiple innocent people into helping her, and showed no remorse when caught. But what makes this case particularly disturbing is not just the crime itself, but what it reveals about the perpetrator's character. This was not a crime of passion or desperation. This was the calculated elimination of what she saw as an obstacle to her happiness. In my work with crime victims over the past 5 years, I've learned that the most dangerous criminals are often those who appear most normal on the surface. Delilah Montgomery is beautiful, intelligent, and capable of inspiring trust and affection. These qualities don't make her less dangerous. They make her more dangerous. A person who can smile at a child while planning her death, who can pose for wedding photos while anticipating a murder, who can maintain perfect composure while discussing the elimination of a 7-year-old as a problem to be solved. This is not someone who can be rehabilitated through therapy or time served. Delilah Montgomery is a sociopath who views other people as expendable when they interfere with her desires. She has never expressed genuine remorse for her actions, never acknowledged the harm she caused, never demonstrated any understanding of why attempting to murder a child was wrong. If she is released, she will pose a continued threat not just to Luna, but to anyone who might stand between her and what she wants. She has already proven that she's willing to kill to get her way. Why would we give her another opportunity? Please keep this dangerous woman in prison. Please don't force my family to live in fear of someone who already tried to destroy us once. The parole hearing was scheduled for a cold February morning at the state correctional facility where Delilah had been serving her sentence. We were allowed to attend and present our statements in person, an opportunity we all felt was crucial to ensuring she remained behind bars. The night before the hearing, Luna asked me a question that broke my heart. Grandma, what if they let her out anyway? What if all our statements and all the evidence isn't enough? I looked at this brave, beautiful 13-year-old who'd already survived so much, and I made her a promise I wasn't entirely sure I could keep. Then we'll deal with it together as a family. We'll take every legal precaution we can, we'll stay vigilant, and we'll make sure you're safe. But I don't think that's going to happen, sweetheart. I think the parole board is going to see what we see. That Delilah Montgomery is too dangerous to be released. The hearing itself was held in a small, sterile conference room with fluorescent lighting that made everything look harsh and institutional. The parole board consisted of 5 members, 3 men and 2 women, all with the weary expressions of people who'd heard every possible sob story and manipulation. Delilah was brought in wearing prison-issued clothing, her once beautiful hair now streaked with gray and pulled back in a simple ponytail. 7 years of incarceration had aged her, but she still carried herself with the confidence that had once made her so appealing to Harrison. She'd prepared her own statement, and listening to her speak was like watching a master class in manipulation. I want to begin by expressing my deepest remorse for the pain I caused the Wells family 7 years ago. I was a different person then. Someone consumed by jealousy, insecurity, and mental health issues that I didn't understand or know how to address. During my time in prison, I've worked extensively with therapists to understand the root causes of my actions. I've been diagnosed with several mental health conditions that were untreated at the time of my crime, including borderline personality disorder and severe depression. I've completed multiple therapy programs, earned my bachelor's degree in social work, and dedicated myself to helping other incarcerated women understand and address their own mental health challenges. I've also found faith, which has given me a framework for understanding the magnitude of my mistakes and my responsibility to make amends. I know that nothing I can say or do will undo the harm I caused Luna Wells and her family. But I also know that the person who committed that terrible crime no longer exists. Through therapy, medication, education, and spiritual growth, I have become someone who is capable of contributing positively to society. If granted parole, I plan to work with at-risk youth, using my own experience to help young people avoid the mistakes I made. I have a job lined up with a non-profit organization that works with teenagers in the foster care system, and I have housing arranged with a church-sponsored program for formerly incarcerated women. I will never forgive myself for what I tried to do to an innocent child, but I hope that by dedicating the rest of my life to helping others, I can begin to make some small amends for the harm I caused. I am not the same person who walked into that wedding reception 7 years ago with murder in her heart. I am someone who understands the value of every human life, especially the life of a child. I humbly ask for the chance to prove that people can change, that redemption is possible, and that I can become someone who makes the world better rather than worse. It was a compelling performance, and I could see that some of the parole board members were moved by her apparent transformation. The religious conversion, the education, the mental health diagnosis that explained, if not excused, her actions. It all fit the narrative of rehabilitation that the parole system was designed to encourage. But I also recognized it as exactly what it was. A performance. Delilah had always been skilled at telling people what they wanted to hear, and she'd had 7 years to craft the perfect redemption story. When it was our turn to present our statements, Luna went first. At 13, she was poised and articulate as she read her victim impact statement aloud. Her voice never wavered, even as several parole board members wiped away tears. The contrast between Luna's genuine emotion and Delilah's polished presentation was stark. Here was a child who'd survived an attempted murder, who'd spent 6 years dealing with the psychological aftermath, speaking with raw honesty about the lasting impact of the crime. After all the statements had been presented, the parole board asked Delilah a few questions. "Ms. Montgomery, if you could go back to that night at the wedding, what would you do differently?" "I would seek help for my mental health issues before they led me to such a dark place," she replied smoothly. "I would communicate with my husband about my insecurities instead of letting them fester. Most importantly, I would remember that Luna was just a child who had already lost her mother, and that she needed love and patience, not resentment." "Do you take full responsibility for your actions?" "Absolutely. While I now understand the mental health factors that contributed to my crime, I don't use them as an excuse. I made the choice to try to harm an innocent child, and that choice was inexcusable regardless of my psychological state. If released, how would you ensure that you never pose a threat to the victim or her family again?" "I would maintain strict compliance with any restraining orders or probation requirements. I would continue my therapy and medication under professional supervision. And honestly, I would probably relocate to a different state to ensure that the Wells family never has to worry about encountering me accidentally." The board deliberated for 2 hours while we waited in an adjacent room. Luna spent the time doing homework, her focus and calm impressive given the circumstances. Harrison paced like a caged animal. Hazel held my hand and occasionally whispered prayers under her breath. When we were called back into the room, the chairwoman of the parole board delivered their decision. After careful consideration of all testimony, evidence, and statements presented today, the board has voted to deny parole for Delilah Montgomery. While we acknowledge the apparent progress she has made during her incarceration, the calculated nature of her crime, the lack of genuine remorse demonstrated at her original trial, and the continuing threat she poses to public safety, particularly to the victim, outweigh the factors in favor of release. The relief that flooded through me was so intense I nearly collapsed. Luna grabbed my hand and squeezed it tight, her eyes bright with unshed tears of relief. Harrison sat down heavily, as if his legs could no longer support him. But the chairwoman wasn't finished. "Ms. Montgomery will be eligible for another parole review in 5 years. At that time, the board will again consider all relevant factors in determining whether release is appropriate." 5 more years. Luna would be 18 then, legally an adult, hopefully in college and building her own life. But the threat would still exist. The possibility that someday Delilah Montgomery might walk free and seek to finish what she'd started. As we left the prison, Luna asked the question I'd been dreading. Will she keep trying to get out? Will we have to keep coming back here every few years for the rest of our lives? "Maybe," I said honestly. "But each time we'll be ready. Each time we'll remind them why she needs to stay locked up. And you'll keep getting stronger and older and more able to protect yourself." Luna nodded, but I could see the weight of this lifelong burden settling on her young shoulders. Delilah's crime had stolen so much from her. Not just her sense of safety and her ability to trust easily, but now her right to move forward without looking back. But as we drove home that day, Luna did something that reminded me why I was so proud of the young woman she was becoming. "Grandma," she said from the back seat, "I want to start a support group at school for kids who've been victims of crimes. I think there are probably other students dealing with stuff like this, and maybe we could help each other." Even in the aftermath of confronting her would-be killer, Luna was thinking about how to use her experience to help others. Delilah had tried to destroy her, but instead had created someone with extraordinary strength, compassion, and determination to make the world better. That was the ultimate revenge against evil, not just surviving but thriving and using that survival to protect and help others. Luna graduated summa cum laude from Stanford University with degrees in psychology and criminal justice. Her thesis focusing on the long-term psychological impacts of childhood trauma and the resilience factors that enable some victims to thrive. She was 23 now, confident and accomplished, with a kind of inner strength that came from having survived the worst and chosen to build something beautiful from the wreckage. She was engaged to David Chen, Detective Marcus Reed's nephew, a kind, intelligent man who worked as a pediatric nurse and who understood both Luna's strength and the occasional shadows that still crossed her face. Their relationship was built on complete honesty about her past and unwavering support for her future. Harrison and Hazel had celebrated their 15th wedding anniversary the previous spring, surrounded by the large extended family they'd built together. They'd adopted 2 more children from the foster system, siblings Marcus, now 11, and Sophie, now 9, who'd needed the same kind of love and stability that had healed our family years ago. I was 88 now, slowed by arthritis but still sharp, still involved in victim advocacy work, still the matriarch who kept our sprawling family connected and grounded. My hair was completely white, my hands were more wrinkled, but my determination to protect the people I loved remained as fierce as ever. Which was why, when the notification came that Delilah Montgomery was once again eligible for parole, I felt not dread but a familiar, steely resolve. "She's 73 now," Harrison pointed out when we gathered for our family meeting about the upcoming hearing. "She's been in prison for 22 years. Even if they release her, how much of a threat can she really be?" But Luna, now a trained psychologist who specialized in criminal behavior, shook her head. "Age doesn't cure sociopathy, Dad. If anything, it might make her more dangerous. She's had over 2 decades to nurse her resentment and plan her revenge. If she gets out, she's going to blame our family for stealing her life from her." The hearing was scheduled for a crisp October morning. This time our family had grown. We now included David, Marcus, Sophie, and several close family friends who'd become part of our support system over the years. Luna had prepared a new victim impact statement, written from the perspective of a woman who'd built a successful life despite someone's attempt to steal it from her. "My name is Dr. Luna Welschen, and I'm here to tell you about the woman who tried to kill me when I was 7 years old. 23 years ago, Delilah Montgomery planned my murder because she saw me as an inconvenience. Not because I'd hurt her, not because I posed any threat to her, but simply because I existed and she wanted me not to. I've spent the last 2 decades becoming an expert in criminal psychology, and I can tell you that what Delilah Montgomery attempted to do to me is not something people recover from or outgrow. It's not a mistake made in youth that can be forgiven with time and therapy. She tried to murder a child in cold blood, planned it methodically, and showed no remorse when caught. These are the actions of someone fundamentally broken, someone who views other people as objects to be manipulated or eliminated when convenient. I've built a beautiful life despite what she tried to do to me. I have degrees from Stanford and UC Berkeley. I work with traumatized children, helping them heal from experiences like mine. I'm engaged to a wonderful man who knows my story and loves me anyway. I have adopted siblings who bring joy to our family every day. But I will never be the person I might have been if Delilah Montgomery hadn't tried to kill me. I will always be someone who checks her food carefully, who researches new people before trusting them, who sees potential threats where others see friendly faces. More importantly, if you release her, I will spend whatever time I have left wondering if this is the day she decides to finish what she started. I'll worry about my future children, my family, anyone who might become a target of her revenge. Delilah Montgomery forfeited her right to freedom when she chose to try to murder a child. Some crimes are too heinous, too calculated, too evil to be forgiven or forgotten. What she did to me was one of those crimes. Please don't give her another chance to hurt people. Please keep my family safe by keeping her exactly where she belongs, in prison for the rest of her life. When Delilah was brought into the hearing room, the years of incarceration were evident on her face and in her posture. She was 60 now, her once golden hair completely gray, her skin weathered by decades in institutional settings. But her eyes still held the cold intelligence that had made her so dangerous all those years ago. Her statement to the parole board was different this time. Gone was the polished redemption narrative, the claims of mental illness and religious conversion. Instead, she spoke with the calm resignation of someone who'd had decades to think about her choices. Asterisk. I know you're not going to release me today. I know the Wells family will make sure of that, just like they have for the past 23 years. Asterisk. Asterisk. I've had a lot of time to think about what I did and why I did it. The truth is, I'm not sorry I tried to kill Luna Wells. I'm sorry I failed. Asterisk. That little girl represented everything that was wrong with my life. The constant reminder that I would never be Harrison's first choice, never be the most important person in his world, never have the perfect family I deserved. Asterisk. I could have been a good mother to children who were actually mine. I could have given Harrison the uncomplicated love he needed. But none of that was possible as long as she existed. Asterisk. Asterisk. So no, I don't regret my actions. I regret my failure. And I regret that my failure has cost me 23 years of life that I'll never get back. Asterisk. Asterisk. You want to know if I'm a threat to public safety? You want to know if I've been rehabilitated? The answer is no. I am exactly the same person I was 23 years ago, except now I'm older and angrier and I have nothing left to lose. Asterisk. Asterisk. Keep me in prison. It's where I belong, and it's where I'll probably die. But don't pretend that what you're doing is justice. What you're doing is protecting the people who destroyed my life from facing the consequences of their interference. Asterisk. The honesty was chilling. After more than 2 decades, Delilah had finally stopped pretending to be someone she wasn't. She'd revealed herself fully, a woman so consumed by narcissistic rage that she still, even now, saw herself as the victim of the crime she'd attempted to commit.